this video, I'm going to show you how to run through the radio setup routine in OPConfig. It's very simple and it only takes a few moments, but it's also very important that you do this first before trying to use the TCB and for sure before assigning any function triggers on the Functions tab. First, attach your receiver to the TCB. Then turn on your transmitter. Connect the TCB to the computer with a USB cable. The USB cable will provide enough power so you won't need a battery for radio setup. Make sure you have the correct COM port selected and then click the connect button. Once you've connected, we will click the read radio button and the TCB will start streaming radio data to the OPConfig program, as you can see here. The information on the right side of the screen shows you what the TCB thinks the radio is doing. The settings on the left are where we give the TCB specific information about every channel on our radio. We're going to go through every channel one by one and make sure the settings are correct. First, I'll start with the throttle stick, which for me is on the right side, but you can set it to the left if you prefer. You'll notice as I move the throttle stick up and down, the TCB actually thinks I'm moving the steering left and right. I can see that steering is set to channel 2, so I just need to set throttle to channel 2 instead. Now throttle works correctly, but steering is swapped with turret rotation. So I just need to take channel 4, which is what turret rotation is, and assign that to steering instead. Each radio manufacturer sends the 4 stick channels in a different order, so we just have to go through them one by one and figure out what the order should be. You can see that my turret stick looks okay, but my barrel elevation stick is reversed. But all I have to do is check the reversed box, and you can see now that the directions are correct. Next we'll go through all the aux channels. And for these, the order isn't really important, but the type and the number of positions is. This first switch is a 2-position switch, so we don't need to make any changes there. This other switch here, as you can tell, is actually a 3-position switch, and the TCB thinks it's 2, so we change it to 3. And now, as you can see, when I move the switch, the TCB correctly deciphers all 3 positions. This next switch I already know is a 3-position switch, and you can see the blue bars do show 3 positions, but the TCB on the far right column in switch pause was only showing us 2. Now when I move the switch, it's showing position 1, 2, 3, so that's correct. This next one is a 2-position switch again, so no changes needed. I guess this is getting pretty boring, but we'll just keep going through. There's a lot of switches on this transmitter. This one is a 2-position momentary, so that's fine, don't need to change anything. Another 2-position, also fine. The next channel you can see here is a knob, which is actually analog. There's no number of positions, there's infinite positions. So we change this to analog, and that's what we want for that one. Over here, a couple more 2-position switches, and another variable knob, so we set that to analog. Analogs are nice because they allow you to trigger analog functions, and some of those are sort of unique. You can see more about that in the video on function triggers. Now in this video I'm using an S-bus receiver, and although my transmitter is actually sending the full 16 channels, as we've just seen, I only have 14 physical controls on the transmitter. So I'm going to set channel 15 and 16 to NA, not applicable, and when I do that, OPConfig will hide those channels from the trigger list, so I don't use them to trigger a function, because then that function would never actually work. Okay, so all our channels are set up correctly. There's just 2 more steps to complete the radio setup. First, we want the TCB to know precisely what the channel centers are, especially for the 4 sticks. Now, RC radio specifications dictate that a center value should be a pulse width of 1500 microseconds, but it's never exactly that. As you can see with my turret rotation channel, the stick is centered right now and the pulse width is 1498, so not exactly 1500, and the reason it's even that close is that this is a digital S-bus receiver. If you're using a PPM receiver, it's probably not even going to be that close to 1500. And it's okay if your centered value is not 1500 exactly, but we just need to make sure that the TCB knows what that center value actually is. So my sticks are centered, and for the fun of it, I'm also going to center my 3-position switches, although that actually isn't very important. Now all I have to do is click on the Save Stick Centers button and accept the little dialog, and that's it. It's saved the center values. Now the final step is to save the min and max values for every channel. This is a little more involved than saving the centers. We're first going to click the Save Min Max button, and it's going to give us a message that is telling us to move all of our controls to their min and max values, and when we're done, we'll click that button again. So I'm going to move every control to its min and max, and you'll see that as I do, the blue bars for that channel, instead of going from one side to the other, they actually fill in. And they may not fill in all the way to the very end, that's okay, but what you want to do is just get that bar filled out as much as you can for every channel. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up with these knobs on the top of the transmitter, and now I'm done. And my min and max values look remarkably consistent, and again, that's only because I'm using a digital S-bus receiver. If you're using PPM, your min and max will vary for each channel, and that's completely normal. Okay, so to finish, we just click Save Min Max again, and it saved it. And now we're done reading the radio. We can click on that, and you'll see that OPConfig tries immediately to save just the radio settings to the TCB. It won't save all the settings. If you want to do that, of course, you have to press the blue up arrow button at the top of the program. Now, you might have noticed when it was writing the settings that it got most of the way through and then it paused for several seconds before it finished. This is normal. It just means that Windows has interrupted the OPConfig program for some reason, and if you just wait a few seconds, it will finish the upload. Okay, that's it. That's all you have to do for radio setup. And of course, it's a very good idea now to save these settings to a file on your computer so you don't have to repeat this whole process again. And now that your transmitter has been defined in the program, you can proceed to create function triggers where the channels on your radio are triggers that you can map to functions on the TCB. And depending on how you map those channels to the functions, you can use the same transmitter without any changes to the transmitter on multiple different models with different configurations, and you just change all the mapping here in OPConfig. You can check out our video on function triggers to learn more about those, but your radio is now set up.